Welcome to today's episode. Last week we talked about what hybrid cloud means to you, and we saw that one thing that showed up a lot was connectivity. And so today I wanted to quickly give you an idea what awesome offerings Microsoft Azure has specifically in networking for your hybrid needs. So let's dive right into it. As you can see in this graphic, Microsoft has a tremendous network infrastructure. And as you can probably imagine, this infrastructure, specifically the network infrastructure, serves our customers Office 365, Dynamics 365, Bing, Xbox Live, all the services Microsoft operates, LinkedIn, etc., is going through those pipelines. But how can you leverage that global footprint that Microsoft has with fiber all over the world, with POPs in all the bigger cities? And that's what we want to cover today. So let's take a look at this. If you're thinking of your traditional enterprise data center, you usually have, let's say, a data center here. Change this to black. So you have DC1. Let's say you have a DC2. Let's make it over here. So DC2, let's say this one is in Zurich because I'm originally from Switzerland, and this one is in Seattle. Now, in most enterprise scenarios, you have then office locations, for example, or hubs, depending on how big it is, around these bigger data centers. So here it could be, let's say we have office in Paris. Maybe we have one in Basel, Switzerland. And let's say we have one in Milan. So a good friend of mine lives there. Let's move Paris up here a bit. And then let's say in the US you have multiple offices too. Let's say you have one in LA. Let's assume you have one in San Francisco because you like the East Coast so much. And let's do one in Portland. Okay. So traditionally, the bigger data centers are often connected through big pipes because some use them as a failover as an example, but for data synchronization and other needs. So they usually buy quite a very big bandwidth fast internet connection, which is usually very costly. So if we're looking at these two here, then we're having like a pipe. Oh, look at this, I got the magic one. That kind of like connects these two, and usually this connection is rather expensive. And then the smaller hubs, if you will, the offices usually connect in, and depending on their location, it could be as simple as a VPN connection. It could also be something more expensive. But on a very high level, a lot of corporate networks kind of like look something like this. So you have the big hubs, the big data centers. They have a very expensive connectivity between, big bandwidth to move all the data around, and then the smaller hubs usually connect into these data centers. And that's at a very high level. It's a bit simplified, but I hope most of you could agree with this and see yourself or your own companies in it. Now, as Microsoft and others kind of like started this whole cloud thingy over here, all of a sudden we added this one. In our case, it's Azure, Microsoft 365, Dynamics 365. And now your company somehow needed to connect to the cloud, right? And so many, let's take a bright blue here. I hope you see that well. We're gonna make it a bit wider. You kind of like started to connect in here. And if you're a big enterprise, most likely you will use something like ExpressRoute, which you can have up to 100 gigs up and down load speed. This is the same. So here I'm just going to shorten it out. EP for Express, ER ExpressRoute. And that was like a setup very common for many enterprises. Some have multiple express routes and so on and so on. What many don't know is, when you remember back to the picture I showed you, the global footprint Microsoft has, Microsoft now allows you to basically use Microsoft's backbone, that global infrastructure, all that fiber, to go in Seattle through the express route, let's say US West, into the Microsoft network. And then connect that through global reach, express route global reach, all the way to the, let's say, exit point in Europe, and then go through the express route through DC. That would allow you to eliminate here. Maybe you're not going to eliminate it. Maybe you're going to replace it with a VPN connection as a failover, just in case. But now all of a sudden you could use Microsoft's infrastructure to synchronize your data center and data here in the US, as well as in Europe or any other locations. All basically on Microsoft infrastructure without using a traditional connection how you have it right now. Now, in that sense, you see the offices, however, are still connecting to your data centers, and this is going. But we have a solution for that too. If you've never heard of it, it's super important to look up. Gonna make this, let's say, the darker blue here. I'm gonna call, let's say, this thing is a switch here. And I just call this Azure vWAN. vWAN is a super easy way to manage your remote sites, your branch offices, without having to send network experts there to set it up and basically connect everything to Azure. And so all of a sudden, Portland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Paris, Basel, and Milan, everything would connect here. Your DCs are already connect up anyway for the express route, and all of a sudden Azure becomes kind of like the central hub spoke model for your environment. Now, as you know, not everything is bound to your office. Your employees travel, maybe not so much right now, but maybe once that whole thing is over, they're traveling more. But even if they're not traveling right now, they work from home. So they're not necessarily working from the office, depending if they can work remotely and so on. That's the other story. But they access even outside of this building to your network. And there we have this super cool service, which is called Azure Front Door. And we're going to use, let's say, red for this. And if we have Azure Front Door, that's basically a complete service, which is pretty cool, that combines a load balancer, application firewall. There's a third one, all in one service. And it's basically the same technology we're using to deliver Office 365 to, a billion users or something like that out there, is how we deliver LinkedIn and so on. And basically what it does, if somebody goes online and wants to have access to an application, let's say LinkedIn or Office, it goes to the closest entry point of the Microsoft network, and then basically it's routed through our backbone to the location where the application is. So if we're going to have people here that, have that work remotely, whatever, and there's like a web application, even if that web application is in, let's say, in the DC in Seattle, the user, wherever he is, he will go closest entry point to the Microsoft network, then being routed through Front Door. Let's say he comes from Switzerland, but the application is time absence reporting, would go basically down the express route to the data center right there and access the web application. So Azure Front Door doesn't just work if the application is in the cloud. It can even route to web applications that are basically running on premises, running in a branch. As long as it is somehow connected to Azure, we can route traffic there. The funny thing is, when it just got launched, a colleague of mine, he said, hey, it's super easy. And in my head, he's always like, everything is easy until it isn't. And the website that I've taken down, if you followed me, you saw that episode. I actually tried it. I went to azure.com. I tried to deploy Azure Front Door. It's not like that I was overrun with traffic and I needed this technology, but I wanted to see how easy it is. And all it needed me was the mechanics video. It took me less than 15 minutes to duplicate my WordPress site in Azure to a different location, set up Azure Front Door, and basically all the configuration was done for me. So even if you haven't checked it, check this out. I can tell you everything here: Global Reach, Front Door, Azure vWAN, has all been topics that have been extremely well received in these executive briefings that we have. So presentation I get to do quite regularly, which is awesome. And as you saw in the survey results from previous week, even there, a lot of participants highlighted connectivity as being something that comes or is top of mind when thinking about hybrid environments. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and please Leave comments if you disagree, if you want to add some information, or if you want me to cover another topic around hybrid that you really are interested in, and I will see what I can do and talk to you about then. And until then, have a beautiful week, and I talk to you next weekend.